Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. We're preparing for October, for Cybersecurity Month. We have with us today someone that has a lot of knowledge, but she's also very busy. And it took us a good bit of time trying to get through October and ended up finding that September on the 18th, after lunch, she can run home from a conference that she's doing in Detroit back to her hotel room and do a presentation for us, and then maybe have to run back. We're really pleased to have with us Lisa Plaggemier, who is the executive director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. I'm really pleased to share that she is Ohio born, went to the wrong school, but that's okay. Now lives in Texas and goes all over the country. I think today you're in Detroit, and who knows where she will be, because next month we couldn't find a time that would work. Lisa's here to talk to us about BS. And it's not the BS that most people think of. She's going to do an interesting approach to the behavioral sciences of cybersecurity. And so I'm just going to stop with that and turn things over to Lisa. I will be popping up the surveys when she's ready for them. Please fill them out because we want to know what you think. I'll tell you right now, we're not going to wait for everybody because we got a time limit. So Lisa, over to you.
Thanks very much, John. Let me share my screen here and we'll get started. So as John said, we're going to have some audience poll questions today. And if you participate, it's just a whole lot more fun because we're going to see, and it's completely anonymous and none of the data gets retained. Nobody's going to hunt you down and ask you about how you answered on a particular question, but we will get to see how you guys as a group compare to other people in our research. So, as John said, I'm with a thing called the National Cybersecurity Alliance. We are the founders of Cybersecurity Awareness Month every October, which is why my schedule is already full for speaking spots in October. We started that with DHS 21 years ago. And we've had a cooperative agreement with DHS, now CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the tongue twister agency, ever since. But we do all kinds of campaigns all year long on any kind of topic you can think of. Safe use of dating apps and avoiding romance scams, back to school security tips for families and children and teachers, any different topic you can imagine, any different way the technology can be misused and abused. We're out there trying to educate users on the safest use of technology to avoid fraud, scams, any malware infections, anything you can think of. So we're going to talk about some BS, like John said, some behavioral science today. This is what's known as COM-B, the behavioral science model. And I'm not a behavioral scientist, but we work with some folks on this research report we do every year that we're going to talk about today. So what this says is that you need capability, motivation, and opportunity before you exhibit a behavior, before you do something. Capability is just knowledge. Opportunity is pretty easy because a lot of us are sitting in front of screens much of the day or carrying around supercomputers in our pockets these days. So we have a lot of opportunity for our interaction with technology when it comes to our behaviors. But motivation is the hard part. I remember asking my kids when they were little to clean their room, and I would hear things like, "But Mom, I don't feel like it." If I can't seem to get myself to the gym every morning, it's usually because I'm just not motivated. I know where my gym is. I know how to find it, what to do when I get there, and I have the opportunity. I just don't feel like going. If we don't feel like doing something, it doesn't get done. If it's cleaning out the garage or going to the gym or whatever it is. So that's really the hardest part of this model is having the motivation, and that's very, very emotional. Meaning it's probably the most volatile thing on the chart as well. So every year we do a research report with a behavioral science cybersecurity company in the UK called CybeSafe. And we're just getting ready to publish the 2024 edition. What I'm going to talk to you about today is the one from October of 2023. We asked people about these 5 things: their password habits, using multi-factor authentication, keeping all their stuff updated and patched, checking for phishing and other social engineering, and backing up their data. But we also ask people about their emotions. How do they feel about cybersecurity? And that's because of that motivation piece of the behavioral science model. Before I was in cybersecurity, I worked in marketing. I started my career a long time ago with Ford Motor Company in marketing and advertising. And one of my favorite ad gurus is a guy named Seth Godin. And one of his favorite quotes says, "Facts don't change people's behavior, emotion changes people's behavior." And so that speaks to that piece of the behavioral science model. And that's why we ask people about their feelings about security. So we're going to start with our first poll question, and it's going to be about those feelings. So you can bring up this question, John. I prioritize staying secure online. And I think I should be able to see this too. You're using the Zoom point, right? Yep, there it is. Okay. Do you prioritize this? Do you think this stuff is important? Are you strongly disagree, strongly agree? Are you somewhere in the middle? And we'll see what we'll see how you guys answer. And then once we get decent participation, as John said, we won't wait for everybody, but hopefully you'll participate. Then we'll look at this data compared to the data from the general public. So the general public in the 2023 survey was all the Five Eyes except Australia. I'm happy to say this year, 2024, we got Australia included. So last year it was US, UK, Canada, and New Zealand, as well as Germany and France. This year it's all Five Eyes plus Germany and India. And we added a few questions about AI this year, public trust in AI. I can tell you so far the data out of India is fascinating. It's very different than the data from the other countries, but that report's going to be released in 2 weeks. We usually get really good press coverage with this, like Washington Post, New York Times, great outlets like that. We were quoted by the Michigan Attorney General last year. So we do a press embargo. We give the press first shot at the report before we release it to the public. Okay, so we got about 68% of you that have voted. Hopefully you can see the results on the screen. 48% of you strongly agree, 31% somewhat agree. There's very few of you that feel ambivalent about this, or that, only 12% total that disagree. So if we look at that compared to the general public, it's not too dissimilar, surprisingly, right? The public is also very likely to say that they prioritize this. It feels like a little bit of motherhood and apple pie. Like who wouldn't say? Let's see. Are you guys able to see the results, or do I have to hit the share button? John, could everybody else see the results from the?
They should be able to.
They should be. Okay, cool. So it feels like a little bit of motherhood and apple pie. Like who wouldn't say this is important? Like who goes onto the internet to be defrauded, or doesn't think it's important? Well, it's younger people. It's younger folks that are actually the least likely to agree with this statement and the most likely to actually disagree. It's the Gen Zs and the millennials. And as you can see, the older we get, the more we say that this is a priority. So so we actually believe that this is because the older we get, the more assets we have to protect. So we care a little bit more about it. But we'll look at some more generational differences in a minute. Our second question: staying secure online is under my control. I'll let John pull up the poll and you guys can vote. This is really important. This idea of feeling like it's under our control, that what we do matters, that we have a sense of personal agency. As you can imagine, if you don't think that what you do matters, you're probably not going to do anything. If you think it's pointless, if you think bad things are going to happen on the internet, no matter what I do, and I don't have any control of the situation, that's incredibly demotivating. And you're probably not going to do anything. So I'll give you guys a second to answer this one. And this one has some interesting generational differences to it as well. Until we included India this year, we don't see huge differences amongst the countries, except that the Germans are a little less attacked. The Americans are the most attacked. When we ask people if they've been compromised in some way, Germany, after the war, was the first country to have really strong data protection laws for obvious reasons. And there's a lot less of their data being stored by the government and different organizations than is the case for most of us in the US. And I think that actually helps in the world of data breaches. I think it actually helps to have less data out there available about us to begin with. Okay, so 55% of you somewhat agree and another 29% strongly agree. So again, pretty high percentages here. Nobody strongly disagrees with this. That's great. I think it's fantastic that you guys understand that this actually makes a difference, that you can make a difference, that there are things you can do that make a difference. Just some of you feel like you're not sure, and only 9% somewhat disagree with this. If we look at the general public, if you add up the agree and the strongly agree, then y'all aren't far away from each other at all. A little bit more of you guys feel more strongly about this. Oh no, wait a minute. We've got 80 something percent. 50. No, more of them feel ambivalent. Sorry about that. So about 30% more of you agree with this statement. The public isn't sure. They're really not sure. If you look at the results there, when you see that a third of people just aren't sure, like, do I have any control over this? Does any of this stuff, is there anything I can do that will make a difference? Again, we see a difference by generation. The younger you are, the more likely you are to feel that it's pointless, that there's nothing I can do, that I'm just going to be victimized on the internet. And that's a problem, because those younger folks then aren't going to do the basic things that they could do, some of which are very easy, because they don't feel like it's going to make a difference. So I think there's some learned helplessness going on here. This is a theory back from my freshman year psychology class in Ann Arbor. There's also been research done at The Ohio State University about breach fatigue, breach apathy. These are really a thing. And younger folks, we think, who have grown up with data breaches in the news, people like my 20-something kids who've grown up with technology, or were handed iPads when they were in, second or third grade. It wasn't too long after that the bad headlines started about, data breaches and security incidents that are in the news. And that news never comes with practical advice on what you could do to protect yourself. You kind of feel like some company you do business with, or some company that has your data, has been compromised and there's nothing you can do about it. So we're not surprised that younger people feel this way. And we work really hard to craft messages that resonate with them, so that they can change some of their basic bad habits and be less vulnerable. So now we're going to talk about some of those 5 behaviors that I mentioned, and we're going to start with a poll question about phishing. So John, you can bring this one up. How confident are you in your ability to identify a phishing email or a malicious link? And these days that might as well be a text on your phone. Those of, I think, with all the pig butchering that's going on, and I don't know if you all have read about the criminal campus, essentially the Chinese organized crime campus on the border in Myanmar, where they're human trafficking people into these encampments and then making them, they lure them there with a promise, usually from another Asian country. They lure them there with a promise of a call center job. When they get there, they realize the call center job is really perpetrating scams against Americans. And a lot of those are starting as texts these days, texts where it looks like it's a wrong number. And they're just trying to get you to engage in conversation. And from there, it's like a friendship or a romance scam, and then crypto scam, and then full-blown pig butchering, which is not my name. That's just the Chinese translation for the scam. Let's see. How confident are you? So we've got pretty good participation on this one. You guys are pretty confident. That's a good thing. Overconfidence is a bad thing when it comes to social engineering. But having a decent amount of confidence, I think, is a really, really good thing. Let's see. Can you guys see the results to that? I think so. So 56% of you feel confident, another 29 feel very confident. So that's the
let me bring that back up, because when you click it, it goes away too.
Oh, then I won't click it all. I'll ignore what's happening and let you drive. I'll take my hands off.
I usually wait until you go to your next slide, then I go, but there's ours right there.
Yeah. So I'll bring up the next slide. So then you can see here how you guys compare to the public. You're a little more confident that they are. When we look at this data by age group, it's generally the people who are of working age that are getting some kind of training on phishing in their organizations. I used to be one of those people that sent simulated phishing emails to 20,000 employees of a software company. Those simulated phishing programs we think actually do help as long as they're done well, and they're not done to just scare people and make them not want to engage with the security team. Anyway, for people that feel a little too confident, we do see in our data that's coming out for 2024 in a couple of weeks, we see some overconfidence in some places where the rates of compromise are really high, but the confidence is also really high. So that's kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? This was done in just a long time ago. Two guys called Dunning and Kruger made this up. They meant to do this as kind of a joke, but it's kind of true when you think about it. This is this idea of a cognitive bias that just means that we presume that we know a lot more about things than we really do. And I think right now with social engineering and how it's being aided by AI, like the quality of the phishing emails of the Zoom calls, just like we're doing right now, where you think you're talking to somebody that you know, but you're actually really talking to somebody like a human that's been AI generated, having a live conversation. Like it's getting really, really, really hard to detect social engineering using AI. We're all putting this stuff to good uses in the legitimate world, but then there's the whole criminal underworld that's using it too. Anyway, this just says that we start off with the peak amount ignorance. We don't really know that much about something, and the more we learn, the more we realize that it's a little more complicated than we thought. So we're constantly reminding people to slow down and make sure that what they're clicking on is what they think they're clicking on. A lot of bad things start with phishing emails. All these companies that had major data breaches in the last 10 years or so, they all started with a phishing email. Most ransomware attacks start with a phishing email. A lot of bad stuff starts with phishing emails. And no matter how hard they work at it, there's never going to be 100% filtering by, Microsoft or Proofpoint or Gmail or whoever we're using for our email or our secure email gateway. This is an example, and it's getting old. It's a couple years old now, but I still use it because it's such a good example, and it's a tactic that's really hard to detect, and it's a tactic that's still used by the bad guys. So this was an email that came into a company that I used to work for that had 35,000 car dealers as customers around the world, and this came from a car dealership to one of our salespeople. And if you're a salesperson, you get a DocuSign email, you're probably going to click because you think you have a signed contract or something, right? Like this is a good thing. This is good news. So of course he clicked. Of course, luckily our software was able to block him. It was trying to take him to a credential harvesting site where they would have just captured his username and password. Pardon me, it was a fake DocuSign site. But the proxy blocked him from being able to get to that site. Now, this was from the real sender's address. This was not from a spoofed sender address. So I asked the salesperson, were you expecting a DocuSign email from this customer? And he said, no, but we're in the sales cycle, and I was actually expecting him to send me a PDF of a signed contract. So that little difference between what he was expecting and what he got should have been enough to set off his spidey senses and cause him to maybe pick up the phone and call the customer and ask, hey, is this really from you? So how does this happen? How do you end up with a phishing email from a legitimate sender address? Well, in this case, the car dealership had a network compromise. When bad guys get access to email inboxes, they're not in there kind of reading through our emails like we might think. It's not the hacker in the hoodie. They're probably sitting in a cubicle somewhere because it's their job, just like I have a job. And they're using software to help them be more efficient and more effective. So they're going to go into Outlook, they're going to set up auto forwarding rules and filtering rules, and they're going to use all the technology they can to try and find threads where they can jump in on the email thread and send something that looks appropriate for the context. Like this looked very close to what the salesperson was expecting. So in the context of this thread, of this sales situation, this looks like something that you would click on, and the salesperson did click on it. They work really quickly because they know as soon as somebody realizes that they've got access they shouldn't have, they're going to get kicked off the network and booted out of the email. So they work really fast at this stuff. And one of the best practices that we tell people is when you're configuring things like Outlook to disable any kind of auto forwarding rules, because that can cut down on it being abused this way. But really, it's because the sender address is legitimate, it can be really hard to detect. The only other thing at the time, I mean, the Norton logo looks a little off, but the DocuSign emails at the time included a serial number. And that's something I didn't even know until I went to the DocuSign email website and checked, like how to tell a real DocuSign email from a phishing DocuSign email. But really, the salesperson should have picked up the phone and called. Our research tells us that 72% of people, sometimes very often, or always reach out to a person to verify if a message seems unusual. If you'd have told me to do that 10 years ago before I got into cybersecurity, I would have said, no, that sounds socially awkward and I don't want people to think I'm paranoid. I'm not going to do that. But I'm here to tell you that most of us do that at one point or time or another, because this is so prevalent these days. And 2/3 of people say they very often or always check for phishing before they click on anything. A lot of organizations have one-click phish reporting buttons, like you see the images here. Gmail has kind of hidden it. It's doesn't always display on every single email, and I can't quite figure out the algorithm, why that's happening and why it's not. If you have an email open and you go to those 3 little dots at the top on Gmail, you'll sometimes see now a report phishing button in addition to the report spam option, but that's where that lives on Gmail. Companies who are using and organizations that are using these 1-click or 2-click phish reporting buttons, this is really to lower, the harder an activity is to do, the harder behavior is to do, the more motivated we have to be to do it. So this is a way to make it super, super easy, so we don't have to be very motivated to report. And most organizations are just encouraging employees to report things that they catch, that humans catch, that the technology didn't. So a lot of people tell us that they actually do use report spam or report phishing buttons. Very few people that don't know how to do this, so that's a really good thing. So our next behavior on that list is passwords, and we have another question for you about passwords.
You skipped one of the surveys on 24.
Oh, which one was it?
Slide 24.
What is it?
On which way you do it.
Oh, yeah, we don't have a poll question for this one. So if you maybe
Oh, yeah, we do.
Oh, do you want to? Oh, go ahead then. We'll ask. Oh no, this is coming up. How long are the passwords you usually create? Yeah, not every one of my slides has a. So there we go. Now we're in sync, John.
Okay.
So yeah, not every one of my slides, every one of the pieces of data that I report on has a.
I wrote down 24 instead of 26.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So this is one of my favorite questions, this and the next couple about passwords. I think these are fascinating. Sometimes I give this presentation to organizations like, oh, I don't know, the DoD, and you're shocked at some of the information that you get back and what their habits are. The federal government, NIST, and therefore us, we've all recently changed our advice that your password should be 16 characters or longer. But tell us if it's 16 or more, 12 to 15, 9 to 11, 7 to 8, 6 or less. I'll give you another second if you want to confess. If anybody wants to confess that they're using very short 6-character passwords, you're amongst friends and nobody's tracking the data. So far, nobody's chosen that answer. All right. So you're not looking too bad here. The most popular answer was 9 to 11 characters with 41% of you. There's almost a tie for 12 to 15, which was 23%, and 7 to 8, 22%. And then God bless the 14% who are saying they're using characters, passwords are 16 characters or longer. You're doing a lot better than the general public on this one. We've got 2% that actually admitted to using very, very short passwords. 28% say 7 to 8 characters. Your most popular answer is this same as their most popular answer, but there's a bit fewer of you. And more of you are using 16 characters or longer, and more of you are using 12 to 15 characters. So you're doing a bit better here than the general public. Yeah, so the government recently shifted their advice to say 16 characters or more. If we say long and complex, but length actually trumps complexity. It's all about length it's all about the password cracking tools, right? You're up against technology. You're not up against somebody trying to guess your password. You're up against a password cracker. And if you Google like how long does it take to crack a 10-character password or something, you'll see some of those password cracking tools. And you'll see data from those on how many seconds it takes to crack those. So a lot of people are using passphrases with those really long passwords. Length is more important than complexity. I like both, and I use a password manager for that, which I'll talk about in a second. But length is really, really important to slow the bad guys down. Okay, the next poll question's on your screen. How often do you use unique passwords for your important online accounts? So probably the most confusion we have here is what is considered an important online account. And it's really not just your financial services accounts. It's also your email, social media, things like that. Social media accounts can be incredibly hard to recover. I had a long conversation at Meta's offices in DC about this a couple months ago. They really don't like to give people back control of their accounts because their method to verify that it's really your account to begin with is they have a very, very, very high bar for that. I argued they should have a much higher bar for account takeovers. So they should enable MFA by default instead of letting people create accounts that don't have MFA. They should have it enabled by default and allow people to turn it off if they want to cut down on account takeovers to begin with. But so many people get scammed through social media. And a lot of us feel like a lot of our lives are kind of tied up in our Facebook account, like a lot of photos and memories and things like that, and our ability to communicate with some people. Maybe we don't have their phone number or their address, but we're Facebook friends. So that losing control of your social media account can really be very, very difficult to unravel. So unique passwords, that also means completely unique, not like mostly unique, but really unique. 46% use it all the time, which is great. 37% majority of the time, 13% half, only 4% of you some of the time, and nobody said never, which is great. The public didn't score quite as well. And we actually have a hunch here that the public is being a little generous with their definition of the word unique. This number hasn't changed much. We've been doing the survey for 3 or 4 years, and the number stays consistent. This year, we went to greater lengths to be really clear about what we mean by uniqueness. Some people seem to have a system that they're using where they only change a couple of characters depending on the website that they're on. So that's not really unique. So why does this matter? Why does it have to be completely unique and long and complex? And why can't I use the same password twice or even a version of the same password twice? Years ago, before I was in security, Yahoo had a data breach, and that made the news. And I just remember thinking, who cares? I had a Yahoo account a long time ago with my AOL dial-up and my modem. And when we were all first getting online in the 90s, I guess it would have been early 2000s, a lot of us had Yahoo accounts. A lot of us don't use those Yahoo accounts anymore. So I thought to myself, when this breach happened, it was probably about 10 years ago or so, who cares? If some bad guy wants to log into my Yahoo account, I don't have anything in there of value, like they could have at it. And what I didn't know at the time was that they're going to take that username and password and using technology again, they're going to see if I've used those credentials. They're going to try those on all different kinds of accounts, and they're going to use tech to do it. So they're going to do it at scale. They're just going to spray and pray across the internet. So they also know that we have this bad habit of iterating on a password. We think of something that's long and complex, but we can remember it. So then we fall in love with it. And we even call it my password. If you see something, you see that in writing, people will even say, hey, that's my password. Like we feel this sense of ownership with it. And then we use it over and over again because we finally found something that meets all the rules for complexity, but that we can still remember. So we change little bits of it here and there, right? We might change a character at the end or add an exclamation point or swap out numbers and letters. Well, guess what? The bad guys are going to use technology to do that too. They're going to cycle through all those iterations using software and try all those different possible iterations of our password on different accounts just to see where it gets them. So then you say, okay, fine, I get it. It's got to be really long. It's got to be complex. And I absolutely can't use anything similar across different websites. So then what do I do? How do I keep track of all this? Well, that's my next poll question for you. What is your preferred method of remembering multiple passwords? Do you just write them down in a notebook, keep a password notebook? That's usually a pretty popular answer. Do you keep them in a document on your computer, like maybe a password protected spreadsheet or something like that? Do you store them in your phone, store them in your email, like email them to yourself? Do you just remember them without writing them down? Do you save them in the browser, like a browser style password manager, like in Chrome or Firefox? Do you use an actual password manager application? Or this is my daughter's favorite answer, you do just reset them each time you need to log in, which I think is actually a strange form of MFA when you think about it, because she has to authenticate some other way so that she's allowed to change her password and log in. So I'll give you guys a second to answer this one. So far, I think the password notebook is pretty popular, which is by and far the most popular answer every time I give this presentation, even to folks like the DoD. A lot of password notebooks out there. I think using a password manager application though is, let's see, I didn't scroll. That's the most popular answer so far, but it's pretty close if anybody else wants to vote. Okay, it looks like password manager's most popular answer with 38% of you, followed by the password notebook. And then after that, the most popular is keeping a document in your computer. I am not a huge fan of that because there's not a lot standing between you and a bad guy and that document and the bad guy. Let's just say you've got a password protected document on your laptop. If you get a malware infection on your laptop, then there's only that one password that's protecting that document. 5% store them in your phone. Some people are using browser-based password managers. Okay, let's look at the public. So as I said, the most popular answer there, and it was the same percentage of you guys, is a password notebook. Far, far fewer people using password manager applications. I want to applaud you guys that are using those password managers. That's our advice, especially if you're using multi-factor authentication along with a long, complex password that's completely unique. The thing I don't like about a password notebook is I don't know many people who could say honestly that they don't ever take it anywhere, like a coffee shop or on vacation or something like that. And the recovery from that is really, really difficult. Regaining control of everything. If somebody has access to your financial services accounts and your email and like recovering from that, especially for your bank accounts, you probably have to go in person or go through a snail mail process to prove that you're you. All they'll be able to do in the meantime is completely shut off your access to protect your accounts. And then regaining control of things like social media is really hard. And then you're having control of your email makes it harder to get control of everything else because your password process reset process is probably tied to your email. So if somebody's got control of your email, you end up playing this whack-a-mole game trying to kick a bad guy out. And if they've got access to other things, it just gets really, really complicated and really, really time consuming. And it can take months to recover some of your accounts. So these are some of the password manager companies. These aren't all of them. If you're not using one, I would encourage it. Oops. Some of them include things like dark web monitoring. They'll tell you if your password's for sale on the dark web. They'll tell you if you're using a password that's too short, too easy to crack. They're using strong encryption. The employees of these companies can't see your passwords because they're using something known as zero knowledge architecture. And I like how they help with other bad habits. A lot of them now have MFA that's kind of baked in that you can use in the password manager as well. So our recommendation is long, complex passwords that are completely unique, multi-factor authentication, and then also a long, complex, unique password with MFA on the password manager itself. So a quick word about MFA. Hopefully most of you know what this is. This is just proving that you're you in more ways than one, something you know and something you have. We asked people about this, and a lot of people said they never heard of it. We blame the name. We did some man on the street interviews a couple years ago, and what we learned is that as soon as you say to people, you know that thing you have to do with your phone when you want to log onto your bank account, then they know exactly what we're talking about. So we wish it had a catchier name. Once people start to use it, they're highly likely to continue using it, which is really, really good. but we're not a big fan of the name and the acronym. We wish we could change that. Updates and backing up your data. A lot of people think their devices are automatically secure somehow. 35% of people. A lot of us still click remind me later. 62% of us have turned on automatic updates. So something I've noticed lately, even when I have stuff set to update automatically, it doesn't always run. So our advice is to power down your devices at least once a week to make sure that if there's anything that still needs to, any updates that still need to run, they can when you restart. But you should still set them to automatic. There's less of a reason to click remind me later because a lot of updates aren't requiring a restart of your machine anymore. Kind of depends on the software and what it is you're updating. But I feel like we've come a long way in technology. Just as far as how often a restart is necessary and how difficult it is to update something. Set your stuff to automatic, but then also turn it off. That's kind of our belt and suspenders recommendation. Backing up, this is something that some of us don't think about. We recommend the cloud backup services because the subscriptions are a lot cheaper than they used to be when they first came out, and they were really meant as business solutions. Again, something else that can just kind of happen in the background. But we recommend those subscriptions. Now, back to a couple questions about your feelings again. And we have another question for you. I find cybersecurity intimidating. How do you feel about this statement? Do you find it intimidating? And this is a pretty tech-savvy group, so I'm hoping there's not too much intimidation here, but when it comes to the general public, I'm guessing the data is going to be a little different than the data for you guys. But there's even security professionals who will tell you they find it intimidating. A second or two. So far, it's pretty even. It's really interesting. Pretty evenly distributed answers. Okay, so most popular answer here is 33% of you somewhat agree, followed by 24% who are neutral, 22% that strongly disagree, and 17% somewhat disagree. So if you add up all the agrees and all the disagrees, it's 38% of you that agree with this statement, and 39% of you that disagree. So again, you're a little more split on this. So you can see how that compares to the general public. The public, it's almost a third that people disagree or ambivalent or agree. For those of us that feel a little bit intimidated by this topic, I blame this guy. He shows up all over the place. He shows up on the nightly news when there's been a data breach. Sometimes when I'm interviewed, I know they're going to, while I'm talking, they're going to superimpose a picture of some hacker in a hoodie or binary floating around the screen while I'm talking, which always irks me because these images are super, super intimidating. And when we're intimidated by something, that's usually not a good motivator, especially for us to engage and do some of these things that are really simple, like turning on MFA. Feelings of frustration. Let's go to the next question. I find staying secure online frustrating. This one, whenever I'm giving this presentation to folks that work in the banking industry, for example, in any financial services company, where the security controls at work are really tight, and sometimes just to get your job done, to be able to, access a file that somebody from the outside the organization has sent you or something can be really, really difficult. We'll see really high degrees of frustration from those employees because there's just a lot of friction for them to get their jobs done. I'll give you a little second here. So far, the majority of you are saying you somewhat agree with this. There can be lots of reasons behind this. You can be a security person and be really frustrated because you have to be right all the time. The bad guys only have to be right once. Trying to protect an organization when a nation state is attacking you can be really, really frustrating if you work in cyber. The fact that there's not a little more regulation that makes some of this stuff a little easier, it can be a little frustrating, or a little more cooperation between the public sector and the private sector to cut down on this stuff. And sometimes it's just that user friction that I described. So 52% of you somewhat agree and another 6% strongly agree, so it's 58%. And then 32% disagree and 10% feel neutral about this. The public feels very different. Like a lot of them aren't sure. And again, it's a little bit of this a third dynamic here of feeling frustrated. But again, this is not an emotion that's good for our motivation. Feelings of intimidation and frustration, like this isn't going to make you want to go sit down and pick out a password manager and start using it. It's a little bit demotivating. People also have high degrees of worry. 50% of people say that they feel like they're likely to be the target of cybercrime. So not just that it's going to be, I'm going to get a random phishing email, but somebody's actually targeting me. And 58% say that they worry about falling victim. So again, this, all these negative emotions, worry, intimidation, frustration, all this stuff, those are not necessarily great long-term motivators for behavior change. So I got one more question from you. If you've had any kind of training on these types of things, maybe it was someplace where you work or used to work, or maybe it's some other organization that you're a part of that does any kind of training on how to recognize a phish, how to use MFA, any of these types of things. If you've had any of that training, what behaviors have you changed as a result? Do we have this one loaded in there, John? There we go. So you can
You might have to
answer.
scroll down,
yeah,
to get the bottom choices because it's multiple choices time.
Yeah, you can answer all that apply to this one. So if you've changed any of these behaviors, maybe you watched a webinar or read something that taught you something about these things in the past. If you learned something and then were intrinsically motivated yourself to change your behavior, what behaviors did you change? That's what we're looking for here. So it could be many things. Sorry for my cough today. This one is interesting because no matter who I'm speaking to, the top 3 or 4 answers are almost always consistent. Yeah, and don't forget there at the bottom we have the option. If you already do all these things, you didn't need to change anything, then that's great too. It's a lot of clicking happening. I like seeing the bar move while everybody's answering. I get to watch all the answers stream in. All right, we're going to look at that compared to the public. So far, let's see. Your most popular answer.
They haven't seen the results yet. You get to see it as it goes. Now I'm showing them what the results were, and you may have to scroll down to see all of them.
Yep. So the most popular answer is I got better at recognizing phishing, which is also the most popular with the public. Let's see, after that was using MFA, which is also usually in the top 3 or 4. And then after that, for you guys, we have installing updates, using strong, unique passwords, using a password manager, backing up data. And 17% of you said you already do all these things. You didn't need to change anything. So that's really good. What I like about this is the small number of people who said they didn't change anything at all. In your case, it was only 3%. In the case of the data from the public, it was 6%. What that means is you had intrinsic motivation. Like you learned about this stuff and thought it was worth doing. And you were motivated on your own to make these changes. So the next time you read about some of these things or you learn about, some new security tool or behavior or something that you could go enable or turn on that would make your account safer, I don't want you to think about the hacker in the hoodie. I don't want you to think about worry or frustration or intimidation. I want you to feel like this. All this kind of knowledge should feel empowering. And my fear about what we see in the news and everything, all the bad news about the state of cyber is that it doesn't feel empowering. And there's too much security training and too much messaging out there that uses fear to try and get us to change our behavior. And I think rather than talking about what bad thing can happen if you don't do these things, that it's worthwhile talking about how much better you'll feel if you do some of these things, like the peace of mind you can have. I had an account get compromised a long time ago before one of the hotel points programs offered MFA. I had my account wiped out and called them in the morning, and they had to claw my points back from some bad guy who was turning them into gift cards. And they were able to get my points back. But then when they started offering MFA and I turned it on, I have a lot more peace of mind. I don't worry that I'm gonna wake up in the morning and all my hotel points are gonna be wiped out. So I think it's worth it for the peace of mind. Just to recap real quick, we talked about password habits, using MFA, installing updates, checking for phishing, and backing up your data. And if you guys are interested in these topics, or you're trying to convince other people in your family to make some changes to their use of technology, we have all kinds of content on staysafeonline.org and on our YouTube channel. We actually have a video series that I'm going to throw in the chat real quick. Let's see. We have gotten 8.2 million views of these videos. It's like watching an episode of The Office, but it's like The Office of the bad guys. I'll put that in the chat, Cubicle series. And I see here one question where somebody asked what age group. So that for all the questions, all the data that we talked about today, it was people from age 18 all the way through retirees. So just basically adults. We followed census data in every country. And we do that every year. So depending on what the census data shows, we match the demographics of our data to the census in that country so that we have a representative sample. But anyway, I invite you to follow us on social media or visit staysafeonline.org. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for that tells you the latest and greatest of what's going on in the world of security. Cybersecurity Awareness Month is October. Data Privacy Week is in January. But we've got articles that are helpful on every different question you could possibly have around cybersecurity. Any questions?
As I knew that was going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And Judy is in charge of our questions part, so change over to her.
Why are data security breaches increasing in such magnitude, despite all that has been known about cybersecurity for decades?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is that the internet was never designed to be secure to begin with, which I think is kind of implied in that person's question. There are some. So I have a friend who's testifying before Congress today about this, and mainly about scams and fraud and everything that's all internet enabled. But it's all really one. At the highest level, it's just abuse of the technology for malicious means, whether it's a data breach or it's a pig butchering scam. People like her will tell you, and I will tell you, that there are things we could be doing. I'm not a big fan of big government, but I will tell you that if there was a little bit of regulation on a few things, from like the network providers and that there are some things we could be doing to cut down on the problem for sure. And I just don't think there's an appetite. So one of the things we're going to be working on more is, I have a late checkout, but they're knocking at my door, so I'm not even going to answer it. One of the things we're working on more is more public-private cooperation, because there's plenty of times when the government does try some regulation, it doesn't work as intended. And so I think we just need, this reminds me, I'm a kid from Detroit. This reminds me of the 70s and Ralph Nader. Like where's our NHTSA? Where's that confluence of like the public being outraged because we're trying, tired of driving Corvairs and Pintos and Vegas, and people demanding better safety and better reliability and quality, and competition coming from Japanese cars showing up at the ports, and hearings before Congress, and kind of like that groundswell of us forcing an industry that my dad worked for General Motors. And so forcing an industry that needed to mature, like forcing the market forces and all the different things that happened and the advocacy that happened in the 70s to get us to the point where we have cars now that rarely break down. We're at that same point with technology. The technology breaks down all the time, and security is just one of those ways that it breaks down. And I think there's some major providers that could be doing a much better job. So I'll give you an example. The federal government, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of DHS, they wrote a report earlier this year. They kind of publicly named and shamed Microsoft, and that's available. You can read about that online. But there are some major tech providers that could be doing things differently that would make a big dent in the problem. There's cell networks that could be doing some things differently that would make a big dent in the problem. We also have an issue where you've got companies that are making money on fraud. Companies that sell gift cards. They have enough data to know how much of that, quite a bit of the use of gift cards is fraudulent, and they can tell the difference a lot of times through the data that they see. If they cut back on that, they don't earn that revenue anymore. So there's a perverse incentive I would say with the social media companies, some of the companies that are involved when the money starts to move around, like the companies that move money around on gift cards. There are some perverse incentives in technology in general. And so you have some people that are inadvertently profiting off of crime. I have a friend who will post on LinkedIn on a regular basis. A couple weeks ago, he posted a list of all the sites he could find being hosted on GoDaddy that were selling drugs out in the clear, not on the dark web, but just in the public. Didn't take him more than 10 or 15 minutes to list 30 or 40 URLs, and he just publicly threw that on LinkedIn and said, hey, GoDaddy, you need to take these down. If GoDaddy was doing a better job of health and safety and fraud mitigation and reduction of those types of things, they're not hard to find. In this day and age, if they worked harder at it, they could probably be better at it. So do you need regulation there? What do you need to get a tech company like that to do the right thing and stop hosting websites that sell drugs or sell humans or any of the other bad things that technology gets used for? So that was a very broad question. I could answer that forever. The other thing that happens is that we have specific to data breaches, I would say we have a lot of basic IT practices that are, everybody still struggles to do the basics well. The basics of, identity and access management, for example, the basics of authentication. There are some IT basics that don't get done well, and then those create vulnerabilities, and those help to create data breaches. Very long answer.
Okay. Do you have one or two password managers that you could recommend?
So what I tell people is to look on Tom's Guide or Consumer Reports or PC Mag. They've all done reviews. I personally use Bitwarden. I've used LastPass in the past. Use the free version for a day or two and see how you like it. Because if somebody recommends it to you, but you don't find the interface intuitive, you're probably not going to use it. So I tell people to test it out for a few days with the free version, and see if you find it intuitive, and you'll be more likely to use it. Same thing with your family. If you're using a family account, you want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with it if you're going to try and convince them all to use it.
Outstanding answer. That's the same one I give about using him. Is using SMS texting for MFA not secure? What about YubiKey?
So YubiKeys have been compromised. Basically, there's no such thing as 100% secure MFA. There's a guy named Roger Grimes who's got a recorded presentation online about how hackable different types of MFA are. If you're really careful about anybody trying to get a hold of your cell phone or do a SIM swap, if you make sure that you only are responding to MFA requests that you started, and you don't give, you're using text-based MFA, and you don't give that number to anybody else who asks for it, it's not bad. The problem is that SIM swaps are a problem, and I'm on the advisory board for the Secret Service Cyber Investigations group, and right now they've got the banks and the cell phone companies doing this when it comes to text-based MFA. So the banks are saying that, well, that's the cell phone company's problem. They should just cut down on SIM swaps. And the cell phone companies saying, no, the bank shouldn't be using text-based MFA. So they're kind of at a stalemate right now. I like push notifications to authenticator apps, but not every bank will use that. If you're smart about how you use it and you don't respond to anything that you don't think was an account you're trying to log into, there's nothing sort of inherently bad about that process. The problem comes if somehow somebody's able to socially engineer, like the guy in the T-Mobile store, and reset your PIN, and they're able to do a SIM swap on your phone. But that's increasingly rare. I would say, here's my answer to that, because people will say, well, if it's not 100% secure, then why should I bother with MFA? Because any MFA is more secure than no MFA. And I know, like, YubiKey would be lousy for me because I would lose it. So it's just a question of picking what is best for you, I think.
Super, thank you. Bob Gasticha, you're on. Unmute, please.
Most breaches now aren't because of software or system breaches. People get breached.
Yep.
That's the weak link in the whole chain.
Yep.
And YubiKeys were just hacked. So
They were.
like you said, nothing is 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But two things are always better than one.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. It's the people that are getting hacked, and then it's also the way things have been architected, configured, installed. Like, there's always a human error as the root cause to everything. Because even if you're going to blame the technology has to be installed and configured by somebody.
But it's still nice to say that, oh, it's the darn computer.
It's
no,
not the
it's
computer.
not. It's the programmer.
It's the human. It's the human.
Dennis.
Hey, Lisa, before I ask you my question, I want to just make a comment to Judy. Judy, I tried to click on chat button 5-6 times here, and it keeps telling me chat is disabled. So that's why I raised my hand. But
John disabled it for me so we could have live Q&A.
okay. So Lisa, my question is, you can't see me. And that's my question. I go to a number of Zoom meetings, and they want you to put your full name out there. And am I at any kind of a risk, or is it a problem, me showing my face on Zoom meetings with my full name? What do you think?
I think if it's a known group and the meeting is not publicly available, like if this invite only goes to people that are in this group, then I wouldn't worry so much about it. People do ask me how
this will be put on YouTube. This will be put on YouTube.
Oh,
all the meetings I go to, a lot of them go to YouTube.
So then I would ask you, like, does that mean that you don't have Facebook, or when somebody takes a picture of you and your family, like at a birthday party, they don't put that picture on Facebook? Like, it's really, really, I agree that people should try to reduce their footprint, but it's really, really hard to rely on that as a way of having complete privacy and security, because somebody else is going to post a picture of you, somebody's going to tag you in something online. It could be as innocuous as a family photo at the holidays or something that somebody throws on Facebook. And I know there are people that are concerned about their privacy and don't like the idea of biometrics, but my feeling about that is that there's cameras everywhere anyway already. The way I feel about that is if you're using, for example, a biometric login for your device, or using biometrics as part of MFA, and they make it easier and faster for you to use MFA, and you might not lock your device if you couldn't unlock it with your face, like if those things cause you to have better security habits, then I'm okay with that, because I'm actually more concerned about your phone getting hacked or you getting data or money stolen from you than I am about trying to limit how much your face is online. The big thing that we're seeing now is people are taking images and recordings of people and using those, feeding those into AI, and then they'll use that to make a recording or make an image of you or make a video of you that they use to socially engineer somebody. But I do know people that really, really, really try to reduce their footprint, how often their image or their voice is online. That's not a bad idea, but I wouldn't rely on it too heavily, I guess, is how I would think about it.
Thank you. Randy.
Lisa, I want to say first, great presentation.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One involves for the operating systems that are available today, what do you think are the needs for antivirus on those systems, let's say over and above what's provided by the system? And the second question is, do you recommend people not do their email on their phone? And if so, for what reasons?
I don't have any problem doing email on my phone any more than I would my desktop. For our organization, we've got endpoint software on people's phones. If they're using a personal device, we've got BYOD software that protects the organization. If you want to do company business on your phone, then you have to have that software. And then if your phone is lost or stolen, we can brick your phones, which people don't like, but but as far as operating systems and security software, that's probably a better question for a more technical member of our team. I know that Microsoft is doing a lot, I think, to improve in that area. I still use, I've got Bitdefender running, and I think we use that as an organization too. I'd have to double check. I still believe in having antivirus software in addition to, whatever you're using, whatever operating system you're on or whatever. I think you have to think about it too, is there's this concept of layered defense, which says that, it's kind of like the old medieval castle. There's a moat and there's a fire-breathing dragon and there's a drawbridge and, right? If somebody gets through one, they're like, you've got to have something else that gets in their way. And that's really the best way to think about it. You're going to have some technology that's overlapping in defense, and that's a good thing, and that's by design. You just want to make sure that they play nicely together on your machine, because sometimes that can be problematic. But in general, I wouldn't think of it as, oh, do I need this because I already have this other thing? I would think of it more as like, okay, if Microsoft Defender, misses something, do I have something else that's going to catch it? Because and the same thing with like email security and everything else. The problem is the bad guys are iterating so quickly, and they're just moving at the speed of light, and you've got multiple adversaries coming at you at once, and they're doing it really quickly, and they're iterating really fast. And things we used to rely on, like, some of the technology would look to see like, oh, that's a brand new URL, that's a brand new website, so we're going to scrutinize that more because we think that might be a credential harvesting site or whatever. Well, now there's ways that the bad guys can age a URL, like fake the aging of a website, or they'll go out there and stand up a bunch of URLs and not use them for a little while. And it's a complete game. It's an arms race. It's just a complete arms race. So every time we think we're doing something that catches the bad guys, they get smarter, and then we get smarter and they get smarter. And so I wouldn't think about it so much as having an extra protection in place that's unnecessary. I would think about it like belt and suspenders.
Cool. Kay.
I got a response from Guardio that says we've scanned your number and found 4 data leaks linked to it, including your address. Resolve them here. What do we know about Guardio?
I've never heard of them. So I have some strong opinions I can share real briefly if you guys have time about things like credit monitoring services, or anybody telling you like your data's been, your data's not. Now, when you get a breach notification letter in the mail, I got 3 of them sitting in my briefcase right now. Go ahead and sign up for the free credit monitoring. It doesn't hurt. The reality is, like, so much of our data is already publicly available. Like, trying to claw it all back at this point is futile. What you really have to watch for is how somebody can use that data against you. How are they going to use that to socially engineer you? How are they going to use that to trick you? How are they going to use that to pretend they're somebody they're not and try and get something of yours? So rather than focusing on what kind of data is out there, you can look on haveibeenpwned.com and see, how much your email address has been involved in a breach, for example. You're not going to stop that, but you can be aware of what somebody can do with that information and try and stop those things. The other thing I'd say is please freeze your credit. Freeze it at all the credit bureaus. That is the only thing that is going to prohibit somebody from perpetrating identity theft on you. Having monitoring services just tells you that somebody's trying or that somebody already has. It doesn't prohibit them. So you can unfreeze it when you go to, I just leased a new car lately. I sat there on my phone and unfroze it for a second so the finance manager could run the paperwork on the lease. And when he was done 10 minutes later, I froze it again. So, and if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if there's a baby with a brand new social security number, that is really important to protect because they won't know that their identity's been compromised and their credit's been ruined until they grow up and are applying for a school loan or something like that. So that's the biggest tip I have there. But I wouldn't worry about these letters and emails and things that we get trying to coax you into doing something and doing business with them to try and stop something bad from happening. There are some legitimate companies, but I feel like some of those services are not worth it.
Thank you.
Donald.
Hi. I'm finding quite a few people. I'm on Twitter, or what they now refer to as X. I'm finding quite a few people trying to contact me. Hi, how you doing? Asking me all kinds of wonderful questions. I had one lady recently say, "I'm a lottery winner. I want to give you $20,000." And they always want to get you on WhatsApp or Telegram or some other application. What is it with these applications that they're trying to get you on? And why Telegram and WhatsApp? And
they're just using every single tool available to them. They're trying to get people to respond. So I can't find a link now, but if you Google like pig butchering Myanmar Chinese cybercrime, like you'll find these articles on this campus that's been built, this criminal Chinese organized crime campus, and the people that are being human trafficked into sitting there all day and sending texts and leaving voice messages and using all these other messaging apps. They're literally just, so my friend who's testifying before Congress today, her name's Erin West. If you have a chance to watch the recording, I guarantee you it'll be interesting. She believes, she's a prosecutor from Santa Clara, California, who's really gone deep into some of these scams and trying to start a movement to disrupt these things. She believes this is the wholesale movement of wealth from Americans to China. And I don't disagree with her because the losses, I also talked to somebody else who's ex-CIA data guy who's started a nonprofit trying to get better data on the losses to these things. He believes it's more like $500 billion. Like you'll see billions, you'll see 50 billion quoted, you'll see different numbers quoted. Those of us who are in this space will tell you that we think the numbers are much, much higher. So these are people that have been human trafficked. They're sitting against their will in an office somewhere, and the way that they can earn any privileges or freedoms at all is to scam Americans. They're not attacking anybody else. They are brought to these centers to attack Americans. So we kind of have an asymmetrical war going on with China that nobody realizes except China. So it's really a problem, but they're trying to goad you into responding. So the most important thing to know about any of those messages, if you didn't elicit it and you're not 100% sure that that's who that person says they are, like a friend from college or something, if you can't verify that through independent means, in other words, if you can't research that person really is who they say they are, and they will go to incredible lengths to spin up huge backstories so that when you start Googling them and start trying to verify things that they look legitimate. So I'm almost to the point where if you can't verify somebody in real life, and you know that's your old friend from college, and there's lots of ways you verify that independently of your communications with that person, then don't interact. They're just trying to start a communication. They're just trying to get you to respond. And from there, it's either a friendship or a romance scam style thing where they're just trying to start a relationship of any kind. There's lots of lonely people in the world that will respond to those things, or we want to be nice and it'll look like a wrong number as a text, right? And so we'll be like, oh, wrong number. Well, they just want you to respond. They're going to start a conversation. They're very skilled with psychological operations, like insanely skilled. Very intelligent people fall for these things. It has nothing to do with our intellect. It's all about our emotional state. And then eventually they'll say, oh, I just made a bunch of money on crypto. Here's how you can do it. It'll turn into a crypto scam or some other type of financial scam. And then a lot of times they'll try to turn you into a money mule. If they have information about you that would be embarrassing, like maybe you were a romance scam victim and you don't want your family to know, then they will turn you into a money mule for them to use for other victims. And so you continue to get victimized. I wish a day would go by when I didn't hear one of these stories, but unfortunately it's quite an epidemic. So the only reason they're using all those other messaging apps is because they're just using everything. Every tool in the book to try and get to people.
Margie?
For taking my question. The first thing I would like to ask is that person that you mentioned, the prosecutor from California. I would like to see that. What is the name that I look for?
So I'm just putting her name in the chat.
Okay.
Her name's Erin West. She's a prosecutor. We're trying to collaborate with her more and work with her, but she was on, there's also a Nightline, ABC Nightline episode. So if you Google ABC Nightline Erin West and then pig butchering, I'll put that all in the chat.
Thank you.
Pig butchering is what the Chinese call the scam. She was on, the Nightline did a segment on it that's on YouTube or on ABC streaming or something. You can find it out there. I think it's on YouTube.
But the other thing I wanted to ask, I get the heebie-jeebies when I see my people using the phone to do banking. I just feel that's not safe. And the other one that I need to ask for my own benefit is, at this age, if it's not for one of mine, it's for someone else. But I'll sit 12 hours at the hospital waiting for someone to recover from surgery. I take my tablet and I get into my tablet. How safe is that?
Well, these days, you don't even, I hear a lot of people now saying publicly that you don't even need to use a VPN. Like you could do banking on your tablet on public hospital Wi-Fi because your banking website is going to be secure. I have, my parents are 82. My dad doesn't want to touch the computer, doesn't want to do any of his finances online, none of it. My mom, I can't keep her off, and I also can't keep her from clicking on things that are malicious. So knowing I have that combination, we have to be really smart about what we sign them up for. Now, I will say my dad doesn't want to do, anything with his investments or banking online. So I set up the online accounts because if you don't, you either need to tell the financial services institution, shut off all online access. I don't want an online account and I don't want anybody to be able to open that account online as me. Or have, like in this case, I set it up and I've got control of it. My dad and I sat and did it together, but he'll never use it. I occasionally use it to check and make sure everything's okay. But I don't have any problem doing banking online because I know what to look for and I know what to expect and I know what MFA my bank offers and how to use it. And I would say for somebody like my dad who, retired before his company even had email, that he's not going to be as confident using it. And so I'd rather that if he doesn't want to, I'm not going to try and encourage him to, because the risk that something could go wrong is just too great. So I think it's just working through with people in your family, maybe your financial advisor, whoever. I know people, you just have to figure out what's right for you and where you're going to have the minimal amount of risk. In my mom's case, she loves to shop online, but she clicks on every single ad and every pop-up and everything because she's got really severe ADD, and as I do. And so she just can't resist a good pop-up, and she can't resist a good dark pattern trying to get her to do something that she may not even have gone online to do to begin with. So I like to take a risk-based approach.
Excuse me, but my question, I don't do any banking. I have my little Chromebook for banking and I shut it off right away. But I don't do banking on my phone, on my tablet. I just want to stay entertained for 12 hours at the hospital. Would that be safe?
Yeah, absolutely. And you could do banking on those devices if you feel confident about it.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for taking all my questions.
Sure.
John.
Many years ago, maybe 5 or 6, I put a freeze on all my credit accounts at
Mhm.
all 3 bureaus. How sure am I, or how do I check to make sure that that freeze is still in place?
Contact the credit.
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
contact the credit bureaus. Yeah. If I'll tell you one way you'll know if you've applied for a credit card or a car loan or a lease or something like that lately, and they were able to do it without you unfreezing, then that means they're not frozen. But I would check. You can check with the credit bureaus.
Thank you.
Murray, question.
Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
No, not to
Yeah,
worry.
sorry. A couple of weeks ago, we had a special on the Tech for Seniors where they recommended freezing your credit because it was free. But that's in the US. You have to pay for it in Canada, and you have to pay quite a bit. So
Well, that's a shame.
So that's not so good. The other thing is all of my banks say that well, it's very secure using your computer. You're actually the mobile app is more secure than
Yep.
than on the computer. So
That is accurate.
probably you're better off to do your banking on your phone whenever you can. A few things I can't do with that. So anyway, those are the 2 comments that I had. Anyway,
Yeah,
I had a question too, though. I find that I'm getting a tremendous number of, I don't know what kind of calls they are, but basically, if I don't recognize the number, I will let it go to the answering machine. And if it's somebody I know, then I will pick it up. But and of course, if I'm not here, now most of those things, they hang up as soon as they hear the answering machine. What's
Mhm.
going on? And another thing is that what is pain is that, at least with the phone services here, you can only block 30 calls. After that, I mean, that's not enough because in a month I'll get 100 calls.
Yeah, so that's another example of when I said like the cell networks could be doing more fraud mitigation or fraud prevention. Like they could be cutting down on more of that traffic. They have more data. They have indicators that are telling them where some of that traffic is coming from and what's malicious and what isn't. And because we haven't regulated it enough. Like when the phone was a brand new thing, like we regulated the heck out of my bell, right? We made sure that the phones weren't used for malicious means. That hasn't happened as much with the cell phone networks. So
I mean,
there are
this is
some
on a
things.
home phone landline.
Okay.
It happens a lot more on the landline than it does on my
Than
cell
on your
phone.
cell phone. It's scam calls. It's literally just scammers and trying to get you on the phone to try and take your data or your money. So I do the same thing. I don't answer the call unless I know who it is.
But even
And
a few times when I have answered and said something, they still immediately hang up.
yeah, I don't know why that would be.
Now, that happens so often.
Yeah.
Well, don't answer the phone ever unless you know who's calling or you know the drill.
Well,
Yeah.
mostly do that, but it's really I mean, I'm curious. I would like to know, since they don't say anything or answer anything, what on earth are they doing?
So they could be looking to see if the number's actually live.
Yeah,
They could be they could just be testing to see if somebody actually owns that number.
yeah.
Okay.
They find you answer the phone, they sell your number for more money because you're gullible.
And of course, that's the same thing if it gets to the answering machine. That's the same thing. They'll still sell your number because they think you've answered.
No.
Potentially.
Okay, Dennis, you're on.
Somebody just asked a question about the credit freeze, and I do freeze my credit. But my question is, then I do get these things like you do, Lisa. They say, well, we'll monitor your, you've been hacked. You get something saying, we'll monitor your credit. It's from a legitimate place. In order for them to monitor, okay, since I have a credit freeze already, does the credit monitoring do anything? And for the credit monitoring to work, do I have to unfreeze my credit for those to work? I don't understand the mechanics.
Yeah, you don't have to, it depends on what they're offering and all the different features. If they're just going to tell you whether or not somebody tried to run your credit, that's one thing. Some of them have more features than that. They're looking for unusual activity on any of your existing cards, things like that. So they might be finding activity if somebody actually has like a driver's license with their picture, but your name and knows your social security number, and they're out there trying to, like, I'll give you an example. I had a problem once with one of the department stores that allows you to charge without your card present. So you forgot your card at home, you can go to one of their registers and say, I forgot my card. And as long as you got your driver's license and you know your social security number, they will let you charge to your card without the card being present. And so I had identity theft that happened that way. And somebody charged up $12,000 worth of tracksuits and tennis shoes at Nordstrom's that were not mine. So it kind of depends on what they're offering you. It doesn't hurt to sign up for it, but unfreezing your credit is really the gold standard. Like don't unfreeze your credit. It doesn't hurt to sign up if they're monitoring the dark web for your password, if they're doing any other things, which a lot of them do, it doesn't hurt to have those things.
Just don't pay for it.
I would not pay for it. I would just freeze my credit.
Steve Parker.
Yeah, the one problem with not answering numbers that you don't recognize or you think there was a bogus call is that hospitals and medical specialists and that sort of thing, when they're trying to verify your appointment that you've got next week, they'll use numbers that are untraceable and you can't find out. So if you don't answer it, it goes on to voicemail. And then when you realize it is your doctor and you got to try and phone them back, you spend the next week going through for this, dial that, for
yeah. Guess what? So
if you
don't answer those, because I don't answer those, and I have a ton of things wrong with me and have to go to the doctor as much as my parents, they will, if you've signed up to accept emails or texts from them and you don't answer the phone, chances are that service they're using, when you didn't answer the phone and they didn't get a verification on the phone, they're also going to text you and they're also going to email you. And there'll be a link for you to click to say, yeah, I'm confirming my appointment. So that's one way to do that. When it's like my doctor or my doctor's nurse or somebody from the practice trying to call me, I make sure that I put their numbers in my contacts so that if they're trying to call me, if I've got a live doctor that's trying to reach me, because that phone tag is no fun either, I make sure that I know what number that's going to be and I put it in my contacts so that I can be sure to answer it if they call, because I agree, you can spend way too much time playing phone tag with medical providers. But generally the systems that they're using to get a confirmation from you will try multiple modalities. They'll try a text, they'll try a phone call, they'll try an email. And as long as you acknowledge one of those, then they know you're coming.
And with me, as soon as they start leaving a message, I pick up the phone because they've said something that I then know who it is. Okay, Dale, you're on.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to unmute. I was wondering, does that do not call list still work or what? Because
oh goodness, that was a good idea, wasn't it?
Stupid call every day from
the problem is
it drives me crazy.
Yeah, the do not call list still works, but that it's only great if you're a legitimate caller. Like if you're a election, if you're a political campaign, if you're a marketing company, if you're an American company trying to abide by the laws but still reach people, then you're paying attention to that list and you're complying with that regulation. If you're a bad guy in Russia or China, you don't really care about the do not call list. That's the problem. So if you're trying to cut back on legitimate marketing calls or political calls this time of year or whatever, then yeah, the do not call list is actually still really a thing.
Okay, thank you.
And you can all, Dale, I'll get in touch later. John Kramer.
Yes, I've had a problem where one doctor has referred to another doctor. The other doctor tried calling me. I didn't have his phone number on record and all of a sudden I had police officers at my door doing a well check on me. But I didn't mind that. I could verify the police officer looking through the keyhole on the door.
Oh, well. Well, you had an interesting day that day, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Broke the boredom. Lester. Oh, John, I'm sorry. You were there. Lester, go.
My solution for unwanted robocalls.
Oh, you muted Lester by mistake. You hit the mute button. Probably
Yeah, I probably
space
hit
bar.
it twice. Okay.
No,
thank
it
you.
was me hitting the lower your hand that hit your mute button.
Oh, it's John's fault.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's always better to blame someone else. Thanks, John. Thanks for stepping up. Anyway, my solution for robocalls, and it's like 100% sure, is I use a product called Magic Jack.
Oh.
It costs a little less than $3 a month average. I get a 5-year subscription at a time. So it's $3. You got to have internet service, of course, to use it. They claim that they will transfer your old phone number to the Magic Jack system. And one of the options with Magic Jack is automatic call screening. And what it does is when someone tries to call you, they have to press a one-digit number from 0 through 9. And all my doctors apparently know how to do that because they always get through. But like in the last maybe it's 4 or 5 years, I haven't received one robocall.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm just looking at their website. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Magic Jack. I've used the product for enough, well, AT&T started charging like a minimum of like $20 a month. And that got my attention. Not only that, AT&T, they'd add things like voicemail that I didn't ask for and other things. Well, anyway, that's
Right.
long in the past. I've been using voice over internet phones for the last maybe 20 years or something like that. But Magic Jack is really no more robocalls. It's just, and all my friends know how to push the buttons, 0 through 9, but those robocallers don't know how to do that yet.
And I believe that when you travel, you can take it with you even overseas.
That's right. You can, I don't know about the overseas part, but you can, they have an app for your tablet, because I don't have a smartphone, but they have an app that works on a tablet, so you can take it with you.
Cool. Thank you. John Kennedy?
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick comment about the doctor's office and all.
Whoops, John, you muted yourself.
John, you muted.
I'm trying to lower that hand. I can't do two things at once. I don't need to do this. Our hospital the county hospital has a huge office set of doctors and everything. They got their own area code for all of their affiliated doctors and stuff. So you would know that was the hospital. However, all the bad guys figured that out, so they now spoof that area code. So you think it's the doctors, you answer it, and my answer is I've got a voicemail. If it's something you need to tell me, leave a voicemail if I don't know your number.
That is incredible, John. They are one step ahead of us in everything we do. Joel.
Okay, I think I got the right button there. Yeah, I really like that the Magic Jack robocall prevention. Cox phone service, if they think it's a spamming call, they let it ring once and then cut it off. So you get one ring and you jump and you have to wait for the second. If there is no second, then okay, spam. But of course, they only catch the ones that are from known numbers. So the response requirement, I've even thought of building a device like it myself, but it's always been too much work to do that. There are plans online on how to do it, basically. But the one thing I was going to remark, one reason why robocalls, if you answer them, there may be nobody there. They call multiple people at the same time. They have multiple people to answer the calls, and the number of people they have to answer is based on the average number they think they're going to need. So if more people answer than they expect, at least one or more of them are going to find nobody there to answer. I mean, they've figured out ways to make this the most efficient possible for them, which of course is the least efficient for us.
Thank you. Spectrum catches all mine. I never get anything other than spam risk. They're really good about that. And Gmail's really good about making sure I never get any bad emails in my inbox. We had somebody, their hand is gone. Richard, if you're still here, you always walk us off. Do you have a question from Hong Kong when you should be in Melbourne?
Oh, sorry, no questions, but it's been a very interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you're on. Unmute yourself.
I should make you do that so I can relax. You know.
I have my hands in my lap here.
Well, it's been great. Lisa, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and going over your regular time. You might be having to jump back to another presentation and more workshop and stuff. If you have shared us your correct name, we'll get you a copy of today's presentations for both the Linux presentation and the cybersecurity. We have workshops next week, and then in August or October, we'll have a number of cybersecurity, but as Judy has told me, she's having a hard time finding people to do cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We may not have a full month of it like we have in past. Always looking for new ideas. If you have somebody that gave a presentation that you thought was a pretty good one, pass it on to Judy because they already have it ready. So all they have to do is share it with us. It's no work on their part. It's already done. And otherwise, we will wish everybody a good late September. Got a few more days, and then it's October and Halloween time. So thanks, everybody. We'll call.
Absolutely fantastic presentation.